כמה מילים מחברות לגבי סין והמזרח התיכון.
A few words about China and the Middle East from the point of view of Israeli policy. Actually, this meeting of the kingdom in the Middle East, when we have an orderly analysis, at least if you are educated with this analysis, we start with interest. And we understand that China's interest in the Middle East, whether it is energy which is required for China, a lot of which comes from this area. The roads of commerce and trade, if you live in China and you want to reach Europe and Africa, geography obliges you to go through this area. And there are many economic partners, political partners, terror threats that were mentioned earlier by the ambassador. These could be translated into challenges of stability and internal security in China, and ultimately the Middle East as a supplier of instability is threatening the stability of world economic environment, which is the environment for China. So like many things in life, you can want to disregard the Middle East, but usually it's very difficult to be successful doing that. In light of these interests, let's try and understand what is the Chinese strategy for action in this highly complicated area. First of all, it declares that it doesn't intervene in internal affairs of other countries. And this immediately derives a profile of activity unlike other superpowers that definitely do intervene. The second thing that was mentioned by the ambassador, China has this policy of being okay with everybody. We can say in Hebrew, sababa. There isn't a single place that it isn't in touch with. You do peace with enemies, but business you do with everybody. And this was exemplified in the end of 2015. There was a visit to Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Iran, one after the other. Hint, Saudi Arabia and Iran are not like you and me. The policy papers which accompanied this visit were sent separately. There was a paper for the Arab world. That's the way it was described. And another policy paper regarding China and Iran relationship. This lives in parallel universes. There is this element of bypassing. Not with every problem we have to collide. We can overcome most of them in a creative fashion. The traditional tendency of China is towards the Arab and Muslim countries. On the political level, this comes with a very positive treatment of Israel and Jews. The man on the street is highly likable. They say you come from Isalia and they immediately are enthusiastic. As of the 90s, but as Professor Shechor described, we can say that China found a certain road of policy towards Israel that lives alongside the other relationships. So we have relationships with Israel separately, relationships with Arabs, and relationships with the Iranian. When China is looking at the Middle East and all other superpowers that are involved, it says this is a graveyard for superpowers. Best of luck. If anybody is ready to invest effort in stabilizing this area, you're giving world public benefit, and we are for that. We could say that the Middle East is a rare place where there is no strong collision of the interest of China and the United States. It's a meeting area and it's good for the Jews. All in all, China's approach is very cautious. It hates risk. It doesn't go into places it doesn't need to be in. And we can describe its superpower policy as a superpower with Chinese characteristics. Anybody who does the mistake and says China is not Russia, it's not the United States, that's correct. On the other hand, it's not right to say so. We don't need to count it when we are doing our estimation of the situation in the Middle East. And why is that? Because it is competing in categories that we don't look enough at. As far as economy is concerned, it is a player, a very heavy player in transportation infrastructure and investments, very, very meaningful. In the political arena, lightweight. We didn't hear about very big summits. We heard of Paris, but we never heard of Shanghai summit regarding, or Beijing summit for that matter. And this is quite a wise choice, because if you want to come back with successes in the political field, the Middle East is not a safe investment. And we can ask our good friends from Washington what is their success rate in this respect. And in the military security, it is very, very lightweight. And for us who see national security always starting with the army, we say here we have an entity with no arms. So it's not in the field, if you don't come with any arms, but rather with a checkbook, they are a player, a very heavy player, but it's a bit different than what we are used to see. What are the trends in interest of China in the Middle East? First of all, the long-term trend, very clear trend, whether it is, even if it's slow, is a gradual strengthening of the interest of China in the Middle East. More investments, more companies, more workers, more assets, and they are all in this area or on the way to this area, meaning the scope of Chinese investment in the area is growing bigger and bigger. The initiative of the road is going in this direction and will increase the scope of interest of China here. At the same time, we have a gap between the scope of interest that I was talking about and the ability of China to protect these interests. And this has a political dimension, an immediate political dimension, the ability of the Chinese government to say to its public, wherever there are Chinese people in the world, I can protect them. We saw it in the Yemen, where they had to evict tens of thousands of people. We saw it in Libya. What do you do when you have Chinese people who were abducted? And all of this is very meaningful. And so after the economic Khartoum, we are expected to see some sort of a tail. After the beginning, we have, and the first signs are here already. The military strengthening of China, which is going towards global directions. It is part of the 2015 plan, more investment in the fleet, going to faraway places from the close shores to the deep sea, and first bases, logistics assistance of China in Djibouti, initial presence, military civilian presence in Pakistan, in Gwadar. There are already marine drills that China is doing in the Mediterranean, and of course the most common umbrella of peacekeeping and missions against pirates. And these are the first trends, the first signs of this trend. And we have to keep in mind, as far as we're concerned, the relationship between the three superpowers. I would say the two larger ones, and then Russia. As the Minister of Economy said, Russia is not on the field with the proper economy that fits what it wants to do. This could put a lot of stresses in this area. What is the opportunity for Israel? And I want to apologize with my colleagues from Amman. First of all, we see quite a clear interest for Israel and China of stability. Israel brings a lot of stability to the table with all its our self-criticism about ourselves. The Middle East is in a very deep crisis, socially, economically. Only poets can call it Arab Spring. This is an event of a historical magnitude, and we have to have a good look now. Just like the Chinese language tells us, crisis is the combination of risk and opportunity. China has a relative advantage in developing infrastructure for transportation, for economy, for exports, and as the honorary ambassador said, there is an all understanding of stability through development. When we do this meeting between supply and demand, this is a natural match. It's where China says, we need exactly, we say to China, we need what you have to offer. If I mention China's caution, we have to think how we create safe enough conditions for Chinese activity of development so that it could stabilize the Middle East in a better fashion. Israel has a clear interest in Chinese assistance, in investment in stabilizing the economies of Egypt and Jordan, our peace partners. This is also a win-win event. What we usually do not notice is the potential regarding the Palestinian aspect. And here, we're not looking for someone who is going to host a peace summit, which is how to improve the wedding, the food and the flowers, so to speak, but someone who will improve the condition of this marriage for a long duration of time. And so China can promote the conditions for managing the conflict in a better fashion and in the future of resolving the conflict to advance the stability of the economy in Gaza and Judea and Samaria. Israel knows how to keep these areas safe, and China can promote economic infrastructure. And all in all, and this has many names, we all heard economic peace. And this is what it looks like. This is its initial steps. On the philosophical aspect, a very patient strategy. It's not all and at once. There are some issues we have to learn how to live with until they are resolved. If we look at the not simple conflict between China and Taiwan and the way it was managed, they don't convene a peace summit tomorrow or else, but they let the conditions accumulate slowly and positively. And ultimately, when you look at this thing of you have to reach a peace agreement, the diplomatic battlefield for signing contracts is like the military battlefield. And just like we learned from the Chinese philosophers, we have to go into the battle after victory is secured. And meaning the main effort on the level of perception has to be creating the conditions for an agreement and its success. We also have to be flexible in thought. We are all stuck in the solution of two states, but China has very interesting formulas in other respects. For example, one state, two methodologies. This is not the patterns that we are talking about usually. And I'd like to thank Yitzhak here, who gave me this direction of thought. There's a potential for political framework, for meeting points between Israel and others. In China, with China, I just came last week from a conference. Indonesians, Pakistanians, Malaysians, all of these countries that we have relationships or don't have relationships, but this is the place and opportunity to meet. Another thing, the issue of tanks. There are 5,000 think tanks in China. So the problem is not the armed force, but rather the opportunity of meeting people like us who think about it. Israel, all in all, has an advantage in knowledge regarding the Middle East and an ability to assist China in understanding it from our unique angle, and also an advantage in fighting terrorism, which unfortunately has become our world specialty. Where do challenges lie? Because you can't have anything so nice and dandy. So, we heard about it earlier, the traditional political views of China are usually not convenient for Israel. And in order to put the cherry on the icing, we cannot even affect them or change them. Another thing has to be said here. The relationship of China within being okay with everybody, with Iran, cannot make Israel happy when Iran is one of the most meaningful threats over Israel. And particularly when we talk about the nuclear and military aspect, as far as Syria is concerned, supporting what Russia is doing there is also problematic for Israel, because the direction these processes are headed is strengthening Iran in the area. The security export of China to this area is very minimal. It focuses on niches. We're not concerned when it goes to the Gulf, but more when this know-how and means get to the hands of our enemies, and they shoot Israel. In 2006, a missile ship was damaged because of a Chinese missile, and just recently from the Yemen, the rebels shot the American Marine one of the crafts there and also damaged it. And we saw that Hezbollah also has his hands on Chinese arms. But this definitely bothers us. We also caught other samples that were sent via Iran to the Hamas. And I think that as friends, we have to be able to talk about it. What should we do? First of all, the economic relations, as the minister stated, necessitates more development. As the honorary ambassador said, to promote a political dialogue, it's very important. We have to promote all the political signs. We hope to see a presidential Chinese visit in Israel. I have less patience regarding waiting for the Messiah, etc. The Messiah tends to take his time, so I have less of a patience in this respect. I think that we need to encourage China to assist regional stability with those relative advantages that I talked about, stressing the Palestinian arena. We need to be able to voice to the Chinese government our fears and reservations from political aspects that do not sit well with us, and we have to incorporate the issue of China and the Middle East in the regional dialogue of Israel with the Gulf countries and in the strategic dialogue with the United States, because when the big players, no matter if they fight or they have great relationship, the little ones have to be careful not to be crushed. And we have to remember the scale, even if we're seated in Tel Aviv. And ultimately, the circle of our partners in this room and outside this room, we have to continue developing the relevant knowledge of supporting policy in Israel with our partners that were mentioned earlier, in China, in the environment of China, Asia, and the world at large. I'd like to thank the panelists. Enjoy the rest of the day.